Interesting for me when I was doing my research to have you on the show, to learn that the shamans were the gatekeepers of sacred knowledge throughout all of human history. And Angie, would you say it's safe to say that the shamans are they the same as priests and priestesses? Because we hear of high priestesses and all that.
I wouldn't say they're the same, but they're working on the same modality where they're working with a higher consciousness or different ways of looking at the world. So, and so priestesses, they are using, ulterior motive, not motives, I would say, ulterior consciousness, methods. And then they're not bought into the conventional things, so I think to be a priestess, you have to say, I'm going to look elsewhere. And yes, the stuff that I'm using may work. There's I wouldn't disregard medical hospitals and things like that. There's a lot of reasons why we have hospitals. And if I break my arm, please send me to the hospital. But there's things where I've learned that say, hey, I'm going to take care of my health at home with these natural things before I ever set foot in a hospital. So learning and distinguishing when to use certain things, that's what a priestess will do. It's like, hey, learn my tools and what is best for me now, and not just jumping on board with everybody fear-based and says, you have to go do that. That's the only answer. And it's like, wait a minute, a priestess sits back and is discerning and says, I feel differently because I'm listening to other avenues. As a shaman, a priestess may not do this, but a shaman will look at the nature and see information from nature. Like I'm constantly in communion with all the animals in my property. And so I'm blessed to be on 14 acres and they communicate to me and they will give me messages. Like when I'm searching for the right people to do work on the property, I get messages from the animals. Like the other day, we were trying to find the right person to do some work and we were struggling to see, gosh, is this person right? And when this one person came, a hummingbird started fluttering over their head. And I looked at it and I was like, thank you, hummingbird. And it let me know that was the right person. And so messages are always coming through, but who is listening? Some people go, oh yeah, well, those exist, but you don't see a hummingbird every day. Like for example, I see squirrels sometimes. And when a squirrel comes up to me and makes eye contact and looks at me, that's different than a squirrel just running up and down the trees. And it's a message. And so for me, squirrel says, hey, save some money because something's about to hit the fan and you're going to need extra cash for something. And I always listen. And sure enough, 2-3 weeks later, oh, the dishwasher breaks. Oh, the refrigerator breaks. Oh, something happens where you need to spend money on something you weren't expecting. So those are messages and they know because we're all connected. The owl will come into my field when there's it says, hey, Angie, something big is about to happen. Don't be scared. We're watching you. You're going to be okay. But it's usually within 2 days. So that owl comes right to me and says, something is going to happen. And when we first moved here, I think the story about the owl came to my balcony and it was just hooting right there. I said, what in the world? And it kept coming, swirling around and hooting through my window and hooting through the window. And I thought, oh my gosh, brace myself. Owl's here. But it's also a good feeling because I know that the owl it's letting me know I'm safe. So I was on hyper alert for a couple of days, like what is going to happen? And within 2 days, I remember I went out to the kitchen for lunch and I was with my daughter, I was nursing her and I was looking out the window and I saw smoke and I thought, what is that smoke coming from? And because I had the message from Owl, I was like, I need to check this right away. Yeah. And it was coming from the barbecue. And I was like, why is this barbecue on? And I turned it off because it was on, but it was very hot. And I kept looking and then white smoke started coming from the barbecue. I said, this is not okay. So I called 911 and they came up within 6 minutes. And what happened is the barbecue had been left on and it had burned. The framing of the barbecue was in wood and it had caught the wood on fire. And the fireman came and says, had you not called us right when you called us, this would have caught the eaves of your house on fire and your whole house would have been burnt down. So it's because of these connections to these animals that it gives me a sense of connection. I never feel alone and guidance. And I'm like, I am always being watched, protected. And if I just pay attention.
I just got goosebumps.